Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Friday, November 22nd, 2024. I guess November 24th comes over the weekend, so we won't have our 24-24 day. So buy your lottery tickets now. Might as well. The only way you're going to be taken seriously in this country for the next couple of years is if you're a billionaire. So hopefully a big jackpot in your future. And best of luck to you. And, of course, if you win huge, don't forget to send some our way. Okay, why not? That's the big pitch for today. Okay, we got some catching up to do on a number of things. Hey, have you heard that Matt Gaetz dropped out? Yeah, of course you have. We didn't know that when we did our show yesterday, so we were spending time complaining about how terrible he is and how he ought to drop out. And then he did drop out. So thanks for listening, Matt. And sure enough, I mean, this is going to happen, right? You talk about this stuff on social media. Gee whiz, Matt Gaetz, he's terrible. You got to get rid of him. And then there are people who will come on and say, yeah, you're only going to get someone worse, you know. Maybe. And then there were some people who were certain that this was all a genius Karl Rove plot. And as sometimes happens, and nominate somebody who's so outrageous and get everybody's back up about them. And they're outraged about how terrible they are. And then you fill their spot with someone terrible, but not as spectacularly outrageous. And then everybody thinks of them as normal and lets them through. I mean, it does happen, but I don't know how often people actually do that. I think that's sort of backfill. And, of course, Donald Trump is not super strategic, nor does Karl Rove actually like him and want to work for him. So, it's not that you can't adopt his tactics or that people can't become aware of them and then try them out on Donald Trump, but he's a pretty straightforward and pretty simple mechanism, to understand. He'll do the worst thing possible. He listens to the last person who talks to him. My guess is that it's more likely that, some members of his inner circle, whether it was his sons or one son in particular, Don Jr., who seems to be intent at staying at the table. Eric has mostly given up his seat at the table, it seems like. He's doing a better job with his PR if it's not the case, but it seems like he's given it up to his wife, Lara. So, or maybe he's just trying to stay out of the spotlight so that she can get the spotlight and get nominated to the Senate. I don't know. But it seems like his sons and his inner circle, and I guess later on Elon Musk to some extent, were influential in, for instance, picking J.D. Vance as a vice presidential candidate, which, although, Trump allegedly won this election, purportedly, we'll just say it that way if you don't want to say allegedly, I don't think he was particularly happy with the J.D. Vance pick. And certainly the early returns on that, the first couple of days, first couple of weeks of, hey, he effed his couch and he's a very weird guy and he doesn't know how to order donuts, was not helpful to him. And I think he, to some extent, blamed his sons a little bit for that. You never know how seriously he's going to be angry with them. But at any rate, it was said that they were very heavily influential in supporting the Vance pick. I have the feeling that they were probably a little influential, along with Vance, it is said, in the Matt Gaetz pick, or at least that Vance was. Well, he's been invisible lately, but apparently he was very vocal inside the Senate, where he still serves. In trying to drum up support for Matt Gaetz, and I guess it didn't work. So now Trump will be mad at Vance for not being able to get the guy through if he said that he was going to be able to drum up support. And it's the kind of thing that back in the day when the old man still had it, you might hear stories about Don Jr. getting slapped in the face for having unloaded this loser on him. It seems to me, it makes more sense to me, though, that the nomination got pushed by Don Jr. and others in the inner circle rather than as some grand plan to nominate someone outrageous that they'd be able to get someone else through. there's a better argument for it for, say, getting someone really super horrific like Ken Paxton, perhaps, but he could have nominated Ken Paxton. He has all the excuse in the world to nominate Penn Caxton. Sure, Ken Paxton, who we should call him Penn Caxton. Didn't he steal a pen? That was one of my favorite stories about him. Saw a fancy fountain pen left behind accidentally at a metal detector by another lawyer and just pocketed it. Anyway, it turns out not to be Ken Paxton. It's Pam Bondi, who I guess is, I don't know, what do we say about her? I mean, she's terrible, and there are many, many, many things wrong with her. But she doesn't rise to the level of Matt Gaetz, that's true. But I don't know that anybody's going to say, well, we lucked out on that one. Good. Anyway, there's plenty we can say about her, and there's plenty that has been said, and lots of people who have said it, and we have some of those things in pocket, and we can share them. We might as well go that way. Like, for instance, we have, not the most, most likely to catch fire with populist opposition, or just, all around Democratic, whether it's Democratic opposition or popular beyond Democratic circles. But I guess a good critique nonetheless offered up by David Dayen. So we'll get a deep dive kind of critique of Pam Bondi. The straight up critique of Pam Bondi is, of course, that Florida got early word, along with New York, that there was something seriously, fraudulently wrong with Trump University. New York, of course, eventually pursued the allegations and won a court victory against Trump and Trump University. Whereas down in Florida, Pam Bondi, I guess, heard that there was this issue, and actually apparently might even have initiated early stages of an investigation, at which point Trump gave $25,000, and I understand he did so improperly and illegally, $25,000 contribution to her PAC, at which point she did the Gilbert Gottfried thing from Beverly Hills Cop 2, 3, 10, whichever one it was. Is there something in this hand that could make you say, this investigation, what is this? So $25,000. That's a pretty low price tag, really, for dropping an investigation, but she's kind of a small potatoes operator, I guess, at least at the time, before she became aware, I guess, that she could tap into a network that included Elon Musk. Maybe there's a lot of money involved. Anyway, Trump has always liked her. She was easy to bribe. She didn't cost that much money. She kept him out of trouble with Trump University in Florida. It all blew up in New York, but that's not her doing. She's blonde, and she will sit next to him at Pervalago and have her picture taken. What more could you possibly ask for? I think in looking around at Pocket, I don't know whether I actually, I'm maybe buried under so many other things at this point. I don't know if I pocketed anybody's, current story over, okay, here it is. The Washington Post, I guess. This is the original story from back in 2016. September of 2016, so before Trump was even elected, we knew that Pam Bondi was no good. This is the piece that outlines everything. Trump dismisses questions about improper gift to Florida Attorney General. I guess we'll start here on the Pam Bondi saga. Why not? Jose A. Del Real and David Fahrenthold, while at the Washington Post, wrote this piece. Donald Trump it says on Monday, but this would be Monday in September of 2016. And ever since, dismissed questions about his failure to disclose an improper $25,000 contribution in 2013 to a political group connected to Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, whose last name is surprisingly close in appearance to Barbie, which is a problem for her given, the the blonde hair and generally vapid attitude towards pretty much everything. She's not completely empty. I think she did graduate from law school and all that, and is in fact an attorney, and maybe a better attorney, I suppose, than Matt Gaetz was. And certainly has more experience as Attorney General, and was corrupt experience, but it was experience, and that counts for something. Especially corrupt experience in this administration. But, she's probably been having to deal with that her whole life, and no reason for us to add any more to that. But at any rate, let's see. What else have we to add to this? So at the time, this was 2013 that the contribution was made, and the Bondi was at the time considering whether to open a fraud investigation against Trump University. The donation made by the Donald J. Trump Foundation violated federal rules that prohibit charities from donating to political candidates. Trump and his team also failed to disclose the gift to the Internal Revenue Service, instead reporting that the donation was given to an unrelated group with a similar name, effectively obscuring the contribution. I remember that part now. Yeah, that was a pretty good way of disguising it. And woe is me, I have accidentally pretended to give this money to a different group. That's why I didn't. It's not that I just flat out refused to disclose it. A little clerical error. That's all. Let's see. What else? There's, I never spoke to her. Oh, there's Trump. I never spoke to her, first of all. She's a fine person, beyond reproach. No, that's not true. I never even spoke to her about it at all. She's a fine person. This is a quote, like a full quote here, just repeating himself over and over again. I never spoke to her, first of all. She's a fine person, beyond reproach. I never even spoke to her about it at all. She's a fine person. Never spoken to her about it. Never. That's coherent. I mean, it hangs together as a theme. This is what Trump was saying when he was campaigning in Ohio way back when. Many of the attorney generals, it's wrong, it's attorneys general, but okay, turned that case down because I'll win that case in court. Many turned that down. I never spoke to her. Mark Reichelderfer? Wow, okay. Some bad luck in the last name sweepstakes. Reichelderfer? Okay. Reichel-Derfer. What would you do with that? Who worked as a consultant on Bondi's re-election effort, told the Associated Press in June 2016 that Bondi spoke with Trump and solicited the donation herself. Reichelderfer, why did you do that? Reichelderfer said that Bondi had not been aware of the complaints against Trump University when she asked for the contribution. It was unclear way back then whether Trump meant that he had never discussed the donation with Bondi, effectively contradicting Reichelderfer, or if he had simply never mentioned the Trump University case. In all likelihood, lying about all of it, but this is one of the early stories in which you just got handed 2 or 3 different contradictory but vaguely possible explanations, and there was so much to investigate and so many other things to cover, and it was a whole presidential election going on, and everybody was sane-washing everything. I don't know that they ever came up with an answer to all of this that hangs together. Trump University, of course, at the time was at the center of several lawsuits by former customers who have accused the business of making misleading promises and engaging in predatory marketing tactics. Later, of course, in New York, it was in fact found guilty or held liable for all such claims and was eventually dissolved, and Trump was fined several $1 million. Trump paid the IRS a $2,500 penalty back in 2016 after reports surfaced about the gift and disclosure error. Representatives for the Trump Organization said that Trump reimbursed the foundation the full $25,000 from his personal account after watchdog groups and news organizations began asking questions. Trump's latest assertion that he had not spoken to Bondi about Trump University revived questions about why the New York real estate developer would have donated to the Florida Attorney General. Asked on Monday what he was hoping to get out of that donation, Trump responded, "I've just known Pam Bondi for years. I have a lot of respect for her. Never spoke to her about that at all. And just have a lot of respect for her as a person. And she's done an amazing job as the Attorney General of Florida. She's very popular." So I know, I'm stuck on a 2016 article, but can I just stop here? You see how this kind of obfuscation game it's fascinating to look back on the hand waving and how it worked here. The article begins, right, with, I never spoke to her. First of all, she's a fine person, beyond reproach. I've never spoken to her about it at all. Right, okay, so all of that. And then, just like, I mean, I guess it's sort of, okay, he never says I've never spoken to her. I don't know her. I was thinking he did that one. I don't know her. She's a coffee girl. I never spoke to her, never met her before in my life. Couldn't pick her out of a lineup. And then says, she's a very fine person. I've known her for years. But I guess he's just saying I never spoke to her about something. About what? The contribution, about Trump University, about the case being brought against it by other attorneys general. But generally supposed to be confusing and hand-waving, and seems to have worked here. Let's see. Trump has bragged about making political donations to politicians to curry favor with them and to benefit his businesses, regularly using such statements to undermine his critics in both parties. Even before the foundation's failure to disclose the contribution to the IRS surfaced in 2016, Bondi had faced intense scrutiny in the Florida media for accepting the donation. The Washington Post reported on the improper contribution in March of 2016, and on the financial penalty Trump paid earlier this month. That would have been, again, what month are we in here? September of 2016. The timeline of Bondi's solicitation has raised suspicion among campaign finance watchdogs who have characterized the contribution as a political bribe meant to influence Bondi's decision. What? Bondi's advisors have acknowledged that she asked Trump for the donation, but have also said that she did not know about the complaints against Trump University at the time. They said several weeks then passed before her office announced that she was considering joining New York State in investigating complaints against the for-profit education business. Days after that announcement, the pro-Bondi organization, which is called And Justice for All, received the $25,000 donation from the Trump Foundation. What followed, a Trump organization representative told the Post in March, were a series of mistakes, whoopsies, that led to the IRS filing oversight. A clerk at Trump's headquarters in charge of processing the donation misidentified the group, confusing it for one with a similar name. That led the clerk to process the payment from the foundation instead of from Trump's personal account. That does not really hang together. When the Trump Foundation filed its annual report to the IRS, it did not list a gift to Bondi's group and told the IRS it had made no political gifts that year. Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, CREW, you know them, filed a complaint with the IRS in 2016, noting the legal limitations on charities from making political donations. The Post was the first to discover the false listing in the Trump Foundation's IRS filings that obscured the improper gift. Good find. The Trump Foundation told the IRS it had actually given the $25,000 to a nonprofit in Kansas with a similar name to Bondi's group, a donation that would have been legal if it was real. In fact, Trump's foundation gave the Kansas group nothing. Nothing. Officials at the Trump business said in a recent interview back in 2016 with the Post that it had taken all necessary steps to correct the errors. Though Trump has reportedly reimbursed the foundation directly, the watchdog group insists the IRS rules stipulate that the foundation must attempt to recoup the donation from And Justice for All. The treasurer of And Justice for All told the Post in a recent interview that the group had already attempted to return the money, but the Trump Foundation had declined the refund. Everybody is a truth teller in this story. Okay, so that's your reminder of the first encounter, I think, that we had nationally with Pam Bondi. But guess what? So many other things are wrong with Pam Bondi, including, by the way, that she has a dog problem, which is amazing because, we have like 4 cabinet nominees that have killed or eaten dogs. I don't know what to tell you. What's going on over there? I guess the dogs are an even bigger problem than wrestling is for these guys. But here's the dog story. Why not? This from the Tampa Bay Times, and this goes even further back. 2010, it was originally published. September 4th, 2010, Tampa Bay Times, Emily Nips, Nipps. Not a great one, surname-wise. Either, but all right. Hard feelings linger after fight over dog. There has to be a dog in here somewhere, right? The GOP nominee for Attorney General fought a Louisiana family for a St. Bernard. Why? Before she became the Republican nominee for Florida Attorney General, Pam Bondi was a familiar face as a legal analyst on CNN. I guess that's where Trump found her. And, of course, the Fox News channel. That's actually where he would have seen her. But Bondi may have been best known for a custody battle over a St. Bernard. What, how, why? Her 16-month fight with a Louisiana family that lost the dog after Hurricane Katrina played out on CNN, Fox News, and the pages of People magazine. Then a Hillsborough prosecutor, she accused the family of neglecting the dog. Steve and Doreen Couture, I don't know, C-O-U-T-U-R-E, Couture, right? And their 2 grandchildren wanted the dog back and resented Bondi for keeping him. Both sides settled the case just before it went to trial. The terms were confidential, but reports at the time said Bondi offered to provide the St. Bernard with food and medication for life and to visit occasionally. The Coutures said they would keep in touch and send photos as soon as he got attached to a dog. That's a good way, anyway, of having a problem over a dog among this crowd. She didn't try to kill the dog. She tried to help, but she also maybe tried to steal it. It seemed like an amicable ending, but 3 years later, the Coutures have little good to say about their former foe. Moreover, they say she never kept her promise. She was going to take care of him for the rest of his life and supply him with food and medicine, Doreen Couture said recently from her rebuilt home in New Orleans. She did for the first few months, and after that, she was supposed to have her first visitation that September, and she canceled. Contact dwindled after that, Couture said, and the Coutures didn't reach out to Bondi either. Why should I? Couture said. She stole my dog. What happened here? In the 2005 Katrina aftermath, the Pinellas County Humane Society rescued hundreds of dogs, including the Couture's dogs, Master Tank. Well, I don't know why they call him that. That's interesting. They thought he would be returned, but Bondi adopted the dog from the Humane Society days after her own St. Bernard died of cancer. She named her new dog Noah. Flood. Get it? In January 2006, the Coutures traced Master Tank to the Tampa Bay area. Bondi didn't want to give up the dog, arguing that it had heartworms and other health problems that were ignored before Katrina. The Coutures sued, and a trial date was set before Bondi finally agreed to settle the case. Bondi said she sent the dog home with food and medication and kept in touch for, quote, less than a year. She had nothing bad to say about the Coutures, she said, and dismissed the dog battle as a closed case. I just wanted them to keep the dog indoors, which they agreed to do, she said. In 2008, Bondi adopted a new St. Bernard puppy named Luke. She moved on. But in the age of negative campaigning and personal attacks, sniff, sniff, will Bondi have to address the dog custody issue again? The Tampa Bay Times asks as though it wasn't facilitating exactly that. Does she worry too many Floridians know her as the woman who ultimately lost her own personal legal spat with a New Orleans family? I mean, if you're going to be Attorney General, try not to lose too many legal spats. Not at all, Bondi said. I've received a tremendous amount of support from people and animal rights activists. Okay. I think you're getting the idea here. And it's getting toward the end of the story, but getting toward the end of the segment as well. Okay. I mean, I hadn't heard this story before, so my guess is it doesn't really exactly live on, but it does make for a funny continuity with the dog-related problems that the rest of them have. Now, there's another one, and another worse problem. This is the one I mentioned first. David Dayen reports in an actual current article from right now here in this time period in the Prospect, the American Prospect, when Pam Bondi protected foreclosure fraudsters. That might, in a sane world, that would be more damaging for, the big populist candidate who's just trying to help the downtrodden, forgotten man and woman of America. But since that's not true, I don't know how much traction this gets, but it's important, and David Dayen knows, reported on, and remembers the foreclosure crisis far better than most of us. It was really, a huge campaign cause for him. When I say campaign, I mean he fought a campaign against it as a journalist. and including writing a fantastic book on the subject, which you still, when you read it, you can't believe it happened because it's so outlandish and so outrageous. It's a real harbinger of the Trump ethos and just interest and ability in waving hands and making everybody forget there's a law in this country. The new Attorney General nominee, the subheader reads, while serving as AG of Florida, fired the first 2 prosecutors to investigate the use of false evidence to kick people out of their homes. It's really a remarkable story. The whole foreclosure fraud crisis it's like, I guess I would say it's literally beyond belief. He's written a book that explains everything, and every page is like, I can't believe this happened. Where do we get judges who are just like, sure, you have a deed written in crayon. Why not? Or you have no paperwork that proves in any way, shape, or form that you own this property. But all right, I'll let you foreclose on it because you're a bank, and I don't know, that's what banks do. You probably lost the paperwork. It was very bizarre. All right, the first break is coming up. Let me give you a 30-second taste here before the music begins, just to set the stage for this story. June Clarkson and Teresa Edwards were attorneys in the Economic Crimes Division of the Florida Attorney General's office based in Fort Lauderdale. They joined the government to prevent companies from ripping off their customers. How noble, right? In 2010, they heard from an oncology nurse named Lisa Epstein, an interesting name to be carrying around in Florida at the time, who delivered information about how law firms across the state were using hundreds of thousands of phony documents to foreclose on homeowners. Lisa knew this because the banks had tried to do it to her. Again, it's an incredible story, all outlined in his book. I think I even have the book around here somewhere. Let's find the title during the break, too, and we'll be right back after 2 minutes to read through this story.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or 2 would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Net Roots Radio. I made a quick search around actually looking for the physical copy of the book. I'm pretty sure I do have a copy. I know I've read it, but my memory of it is not great. Chain of Title is the piece, the book I think that we're talking about here. I'm just looking through Amazon.com to see if I can find enough visual cues to remind me. I don't know. I don't have a memory of what the cover looked like. So, all right. Anyway, what's going on here? This is my laptop is whirring and humming like nobody's business as the fan kicks on. Okay, making a little bit of background noise. Anyway, an excellent book and really just kind of unbelievable from start to finish how crazy this situation was. And I mean, it's a good story and a good story for a Friday. I mean, there's a lot of other analysis out there and a lot more things happening. But Pam Bondi now will be nominated as Attorney General, so it's important to find this out. And David knows this story so well, and it's so incredible. Thought I would share as much of it as I could. And it doesn't look like it's a huge, overly long version of this story. Just enough to give us a taste. So again, June Clarkson, Teresa Edwards, attorneys in the Economic Crimes Division of the Florida Attorney General's office, and they've heard now from Lisa Epstein, an oncology nurse who had gone through foreclosure proceedings in her house and found along the way that it had not only happened to her but to many, many other people around the state and probably all around the country, where banks and finance companies were using phony documents to foreclose on homeowners. What? Yeah. A group of foreclosure victims had found documents that were literally signed, like there's a signature line here, sign here if you are the owner of the deed on this property, if you own the mortgage on this property. And they were signed in a name, script and everything, and this is what's so incredible. The name signed on the line is literally bogus assignee. Like the deed's been assigned to me, and I'm a bogus assignee. They signed it that way. What? Like, what do you do with that? And all these documents, by the way, had dates on them of 9/9, as in September 9th, 99, not 1999. It's actually dated 9/9/99, in the year 9999. Just nines across the board. I mean, unless Herman Cain did this thing. But at any rate, well, what do you think? What do you make of that? Signed by bogus assignee in September 9th, 9,999. They had documents notarized on dates before they were allegedly created. They traced these documents all back to Florida's foreclosure mills, law firms that churned out foreclosures the way a factory churns out sweaters. The false documents were necessary because banks and lenders, striving during the housing bubble to sell mortgages and deliver them to investors, securitized the loans without maintaining chain of title, botching the true ownership records. Instead of rectifying the situation, the banks had the foreclosure mills concoct false evidence and present it in courts to dispossess people. I know it's impossible to believe, right? But, court is where you examine these things. Yeah, but if you have a bazillion backlogged foreclosure cases and most defendants don't even look at the documents or just say, I don't know, Your Honor, there's something wrong with this thing or whatever, and they don't have a lawyer, they represent themselves, you start to get used to the idea that everybody whines that something's wrong with this paper. Look, you didn't pay your mortgage, you lose the house. The end. Made sense at the time, I guess, but it got really abusive to where it didn't make any sense and where it was really criminal. Within months, the Attorney General's office had, did I miss anything? I don't think so. But instead of rectifying the situation, banks had the foreclosure mills concoct that false evidence and present it in courts to dispossess people. Within months, the Attorney General's office had opened investigations into lender processing services, Florida Default Law Group, the law office of David J. Stern, Marshall C. Watson, Shapiro and Fishman, and other components of Florida's great foreclosure machine. In the course of the investigation, Clarkson and Edwards deposed Tammy Lou Kapusta, Kapusta, the former paralegal with David J. Stern, who testified that the firm employed offshore foreclosure document shops, in Guam and the Philippines. It's not enough they're stealing all these houses on behalf of banks and finance companies, but they're doing it on the cheap, outsourcing to Guam and the Philippines, making the fake documents, and receiving then fake documents that the paralegals would sign. Notary stamps were sitting around the office, and anyone on the team would use them and forge the signatures of the notaries. Wow. By October of 2010, all of the leading banks stopped pursuing foreclosures in Florida and across the country because they could no longer do it legally. It was an incredible example of citizen activism making a real difference, aided by Clarkson and Edwards, the first two law enforcement officials who were actually willing to investigate the fraud. The system was working there, right? It was stopping the fraud until Pam Bondi came to town. Right. Bondi won election as Florida Attorney General in 2010, thanks in part to thousands of dollars in contributions from none other than Lender Processing Services and its affiliates. After hearing about a slide presentation Clarkson and Edwards gave to county clerks in Florida that depicted how LPS employees signed false documents for J.P. Morgan Chase, for instance, through a limited power of attorney agreement, Bondi dispatched the Economic Crimes Unit's director to scream at them and to warn them to lay low. Clarkson and Edwards were deliberately frozen out of the 50-state Attorney General investigation of foreclosure fraud, despite having the most knowledge of any prosecutors in the country. Most of their cases against the foreclosure mills were taken away from them without even being able to provide transition notes to the new prosecutors, as if that mattered. They were obviously going to tell the new prosecutors, let's not have any prosecution here, shall we? Okay. They were ordered not to speak to any other AG office, share any documents, file discovery requests, or take depositions. They were essentially neutered from performing their job at the height of a massive crime wave they had helped uncover. By May of 2011, Clarkson and Edwards were fired. After asking their supervisor why, he said, "It came from the top. Tallahassee didn't give me a reason." Well, the top in Tallahassee then, Pam effin' Bondi. Your new AG, ladies and gentlemen. But maybe not. Maybe she could be stopped too. After the story got out, Bondi's spokesperson issued a statement smearing the two attorneys for a lack of professionalism. An Inspector General report released later was even more gratuitous, yet also petty, accusing Clarkson and Edwards of having, quote, messy desks. Oh, no, wait, that probably deserves some horror dramatic music. Messy desks? Oh, no. And also drawing complaints from corporate lobbyists. Now, that's probably what did it. And the bigger allegation of misconduct in the report was that the attorneys dared to listen to Florida residents. Yuck. Like Lisa Epstein and other foreclosure victims who, the report claimed, were simply leveraging their relationships with the prosecutors to get free homes. After Clarkson and Edwards left, the Florida Attorney General's office never issued another subpoena to any foreclosure mill or associated target. Bondi settled one case with the mill for a paltry $2 million, a small portion of the profits from illegal foreclosures. Other investigations were closed without charges. Top deputies from the AG's office became senior executives at LPS and other foreclosure mills. In perhaps the most brazen development, LPS successfully encouraged Bondi's office to lobby their counterparts in Michigan to reduce charges against the company, even while LPS was at the time, at least theoretically, under active investigation in Florida. Today, Clarkson and Edwards have a small consumer-focused law firm. Pam Bondi is now Donald Trump's nominee for Attorney General after Matt Gaetz withdrew yesterday. Her track record of firing meddling attorneys, we would have gotten away with it too if it hadn't been for those meddling attorneys, who went after her corporate allies, should serve her well, given Trump's stated desire for vengeance against his enemies at the Justice Department. There's a lot out there about Bondi, including her soliciting a $25,000 contribution from Trump and subsequently scotching an investigation into his fake university while lying about how many complaints from former students at the university she actually received. She also became a lobbyist with Trump whisperer Brian Ballard after her stint as Attorney General of Florida ended, seeking sweetheart treatment for clients like Amazon, GM, and Uber. It is interesting. I had some questions about what did she do after she was Attorney General of Florida. She kind of disappeared from the political scene. I don't know whether she just was unelectable anywhere or just found a way to make lots and lots of money and hid that way. But the firing of Clarkson and Edwards, which is detailed further in, David notes, his 2016 book, Chain of Title, great, I didn't have to look it up, is the most emblematic example of Bondi's extreme willingness to do the bidding of anyone who pays her. The conversion of corporate donations into protection for that corporation, even if it meant firing her own staff, was done without so much as the bat of an eyelash. The alleged realignment quote-unquote, of the Republican Party into one that, looks out for the little guy has never been so laughable as with the announcement of Bondi to run the Justice Department. Matt Gaetz may have been a sleazeball, and he was, but Bondi entered office as millions of Americans were losing their homes due to routinized fraud that key attorneys on her team ferreted out, and she saw to it that nobody would pay any real price for that, except for the attorneys who were attempting to protect the public. Unfortunately, this kind of execrable conduct doesn't trigger concern on the part of Republican senators. It's just how business is done in Trump's Washington. I asked Lisa Epstein about the Bondi selection. She said the institutions weren't there for people during the global financial crisis, and the chickens are coming home to roost. And I guess steal more money. All right, thanks for keeping us up to date, Dave, and reminding us that that Bondi has this record. This is not the kind of record, like he says, that worries Republican senators. But, maybe we turn our attention back to the kind of behavior that does worry Republican senators and see what actually was up with that. I have questions myself about what the whole situation was about and what really convinced people that they were going to withhold their votes. And I think it probably had to do with this is a really crystal clear issue of we've got a report, it's not good, and it's got to be covered up in order for him to have any chance. And if it's covered up and he is confirmed, it's going to look bad for me. It's a very interesting dynamic that probably isn't going to present itself in the Pam Bondi situation. And I thought we might take a quick look at what Amanda Marcotte had to say about that. It's been a while since we read from Amanda's work. A couple of weeks. Resistance is not futile, she writes at Salon. Matt Gaetz's implosion shows how MAGA's chaos can be turned against Trump. I don't see whether she's got something to uncover here that had eluded us before. Trump's first nominations reveal the serious fractures in his coalition, which can be used to weaken him. Let's find out about that and see whether any of it is replicable. I will say this, at a minimum, I hope that the media will actually treat this way. I don't really have any reason to believe that they will, because it's pretty good analysis, I would say. And this really is hey, Trump lives in a bubble. He is completely out of touch with where America is and how things and life work in general. The idea that he thought because his sons said, hey, this guy is cool, he's got lots of coke and hookers, that's not good. That's a bad AG, actually. But he's a really cool guy, and he could get us off the hook on a lot of things, and he'll do whatever you want because you got him over a barrel. But he's also awesome. He hooks up with hot chicks. That really should be this is a Trump, the old man has lost it story. He's out of touch. He lives in a bubble. He may or may not know what Gaetz was up to, but his sons told him he was cool. He probably does know what Gaetz is up to. He's probably participating in what Gaetz is up to. But he just said, more to the point, the bubble is, you can do anything, Dad. You're invulnerable, man. We should nominate him just because he's such a terrible nominee, just to show everybody how powerful we are. Okay, sure. And then, boom, it explodes. Now I look like an idiot, kids. That should be the story. But anyway, that's not the angle, I don't think, that Amanda is covering here. But I wanted to throw it in there. Donald Trump isn't even in the White House yet, and he's already failing. Matt Gaetz, the trolliest of Trump's Legion of Doom cabinet appointees, that's a good name, gave up the dream of being Attorney General on Wednesday. It wasn't just because the recently resigned Florida congressman is intensely disliked as much by fellow Republicans as Democrats. Despite the cowardly efforts of House Republicans to quash the findings of an ethics committee investigation into Gaetz's alleged sex crimes, the details kept getting leaked at a rapid pace. Reports of drug-fueled sex parties, multiple witnesses who testified about seeing Gaetz have sex with an underage girl, an elaborate FBI-created graph showing all the cash exchanging hands allegedly to pay for the sex work and drugs. When CNN called Gaetz to let him know they were publishing another story about witnesses who saw him having sex with the 17-year-old at another orgy. He gave up the ghost, tweeting, quote, "My confirmation was unfairly becoming a distraction to the critical work of the Trump-Vance transition." Unless that work is orgies, but I don't know. Anyway, this is welcome news, to say the least, and not just because Gates was truly a terrifying threat to basic law and order. It's a reminder that resistance is not futile. In the 2 weeks since Trump won, a dark cloud of depression has gathered over the heads of anyone who cares about the rule of law, basic decency, and freedom in this country. Not just because we rightfully fear the destruction Trump and his Project 2025 minions have planned for our once great nation. So many people feel hopeless to do anything about it. There has been a lot of discourse regarding the fate of the resistance. The umbrella term that started in 2017 is a description of liberals en masse, but soon devolved into a term of derision for those perceived as overly earnest and easily excitable in their outrage over Trump. There was a real threat that the savvy take was that there is nothing we can do to fight back. And we do face that danger, and that's true. And I contribute to that danger. It's hard not to. But every once in a while you need to remind yourself, no, it's not all a lost cause. Things happen, and you need to be ready to take advantage of them when they do. Gates throwing in the towel is a necessary reminder that it can pay to fight back. Republicans were sullenly falling into formation behind this pick, as evidenced by the suppression of the ethics report. But because ordinary people showed some spine and some interest in consuming news about the scandal, the embarrassing details of Gates kept coming out. Trump likely saw the Gates pick as a fun way to stick it to the Me Too movement. Instead, the story was a reminder of why that movement was so necessary. It's hard for even the most devoted rape apologist to argue that we should all be cool about reports of grown men paying high schoolers to have sex. The MAGA backlash wants to see sexual predators as cool, fun-loving guys. The Gates debacle reminds us that they are, in fact, sad and gross losers. That doesn't mean all critiques of resistance tactics are wrong or that we should return to 2017-style politics. I agree, she says, with Molly Jong Fast that the tone of nonstop outrage from that era backfired by making liberals seem joyless and hysterical. Not every provocation requires a response. And when we do respond, it cannot be just expressing outrage, especially when MAGA thrives on, quote, liberal tears. We have to be smarter and more strategic, which I fully admit is easier said than done, but there are some lessons to be learned from the Gates faceplant. Okay. That sets the table nicely. I just want to kind of comment on the surprising appearance of the word, or the root word, joy here in making liberals seem joyless and hysterical. It would be a real tragedy to go from, well, the early stages of the Kamala Harris campaign themed that way, where the liberals were joyfully engaging, to joyless and hysterical in a matter of weeks. So we really kind of need to be on our guard about that and try and reclaim some of the best feelings of that brief moment during the campaign and let that be the motivation for the resistance as well. But back to Amanda's writing here. The first and foremost is to recognize that chaos and wickedness aren't strengths of MAGA, but weaknesses. That's why I flinched to hear pundits describe Trump as a strong man, and even worry at times about the word fascist, though I use it out of a commitment to truth-telling. There's a widespread myth out there that dictators know how to, quote, get stuff done, which authoritarians use to persuade people that they are a necessary evil. But this is a myth. Mussolini did not make the trains run on time. Hitler wasn't ruthlessly efficient. He instead bankrupted his country with a horrific war that eventually led much of the nation to being bombed into oblivion. I mean, that was the outcome. Do we not remember that? I mean, we delivered it and delivered it righteously, so maybe we don't think about it that way. But yeah, how ruthlessly efficient is it to completely destroy your country for the second time in the same century, the same half century? It wasn't his fault the first time, but that was the background, and he said, well, I'll make it great again. Oh, actually, I'll make it worse. Oh, It is interesting. That was the theme, make it great again, right? As I argued last week, Amanda says, when Trump started rolling out his troll nominations, the Achilles heel of authoritarians is that they confuse power and domination, and they end up struggling to hold a coalition together. When they were focused on defeating a common enemy, Democrats, Republicans were able to set aside their differences to get Trump over the electoral line. But now that he's won, the fractures are starting to show. Even more importantly, Trump doesn't know how to bring different factions to the table to compromise. Instead, his every instinct is to set people against one another in a never-ending contest to curry his favor. That's great for his ego, but it is not, thankfully, how to get stuff done. As we saw with the Gates immolation, there will be plenty of opportunity to stoke the intra-GOP tensions. As a bonus, it can be done without resorting to annoying "how dare they" tweeting, which can backfire by reminding Republicans of the common enemy they wish to defeat. What was so effective this time around was that Republicans were humiliated by having to defend Gates, and the drip of details only made it worse. These people embrace authoritarianism because they want to feel powerful, and having to eat poop in public, she says poop, that's good, that's nice, it's helpful. Having to eat poop in public is the opposite of that. With characters like Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the nomination funnel, there will be more opportunities to mock anyone pretending that they are eminently qualified. We need less "how dare they" and more people who give in are sad bootlickers. That seems like a good strategy and useful advice. I will accept it. I'll take that. Not a problem. Yeah, and by the way, as others were pointing out once again, the Matt Gaetz thing was a head feint for, well, in this case, somebody was saying for Ken Paxton. Pam Bondi, just, possibly just as bad. So the point still holds if you're a believer in Gaetz as head fake, which I'm not. But part of the reason being that... Well, it doesn't make any particular sense, but also because you do still have Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth, Robert F. Kennedy, and some others on the table. So, you don't need a Matt Gaetz to distract from anybody else when you got these idiots out there. They weren't for the same job, but you don't really need to necessarily have it be the same job slot if you're just doing a head fake and trying to distract people's attention with someone horrific. Anyway. She goes on to say that doesn't mean Trump will be easy to defeat. He is going to be president, and that comes with a lot of power. He has a lot of goons whose commitment to ending democracy will overcome their reluctance to be photographed with the cartoonish villains Trump surrounds himself with. This is, to be absolutely clear, still bad, but it's not hopeless. The ballots have barely been tallied up, and Trump has already sparked massive infighting within his caucus. That can be stoked. It's a potent weapon. Nor is this just about short-term wins either. These tensions can be used for long-term gains. Take Speaker Mike Johnson beclowning himself by repeatedly covering for Gaetz. He did just do that. He just made the Speaker of the House get out there and defend Matt Gaetz and say, I'll block this report for him, to smooth the path to his becoming Attorney General. All for nothing, right? Johnson has made showy evangelical piety a big part of his political brand. For people who believe all that Christian talk about morality and decency, his behavior is a slap in the face. It's exactly the kind of, oh crap, they don't believe a word of this wake-up call that people cite as the reason they eventually leave Christian conservatism and join the progressive cause. This is another fracture that needs to be publicized at every turn, not because it will stop Trump immediately, but because it helps drain the MAGA forces of younger people that they need to refuel their movement. We are not going to win every round. There will be painful losses, including many people who die or suffer under Trump's far-right agenda. This is bad, super bad. And no one should deny that, but it's also not over. The resistance will look different this time and in ways that will hopefully be more effective. It probably won't even have a too cute name this time around, but it's not dead. It's already banked a win, and it's still 2 months until the inauguration. So a good reminder and a pretty good analysis all around. We can accept that and work it into our thinking about how to go forward. All right, let's see. Need to find my way back into Pocket. Every time I open one of these stories these days, it goes to the story, which is what I want, but kicks me out of Pocket, and I have to go back. All right, let's see. How about this just before our top of the hour break? As I was saying on social media here, adding some her to the der, in fact, the der going on at the so-called DOGE, which isn't a department and isn't a thing, headed, of course, by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Guess what's happening? The New York Times tells us, specifically Annie Carney tells us, Marjorie Taylor Greene will lead new, quote, DOGE panel on government efficiency. Now, that's something they can create, a new committee in the House, but they can do so, they have to, to do so in the rules package coming up at the beginning of the new Congress. By the way, just a quick update, a lot of skepticism out there about whether or not Gates could, in fact, try to claim his certificate of election to the 119th Congress and show up to take the oath on the 119th Congress and rejoin the House. Now, a lot of people immediately pushing back and saying, what if he rejoins the House? Then they have jurisdiction over him again and they'll have to release that report. Yeah, under, the rules. But remember also the first act of the new Congress is to adopt new rules, and it's a 100% party line vote, and they break your face if you won't vote for the rules. So they could, I guess, if they really wanted to, if people were still willing to eat poop for Trump, they could pass a new rule that says the 118th Congress had jurisdiction over the complaints made in the 118th Congress. The 119th Congress no longer has jurisdiction, at least over the report generated by the 118th Congress. I don't think that's the way anything has ever been interpreted before. Or, they could word the rule any way they want. Matt Gaetz gets to do whatever he wants. But he doesn't have a whole lot of friends there, so it is a little chancy. And, I think he's probably interested in moving on. But could they arrange something? If he decides to try to come back, keep a close eye on that rules package. I don't know that they'll want to do him that favor, but they could. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's read a little bit about what Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks she is going to be doing. The rise of the Republican representative from Georgia signals the ascendancy of the MAGA wing in the GOP in Congress. I'm not really sure what that's supposed to tell us really as a subheader, but just a reminder that, oh my God, we might have to listen to Marjorie Taylor Greene for a while. I'm not so certain anymore how much sway she has. She's a Trump loyalist and she's going to try and cash in and get it. And she is also something of a Johnson loyalist now that being a McCarthy loyalist didn't pay off. But let's see what makes Annie say this, besides the fact that she thinks she's going to get herself a committee chairmanship. When she arrived in Congress in 2021, it's only been 3 years since we've been dealing with this clown. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican of Georgia, was quickly stripped of her 2 committee assignments by Democrats and shunned by her colleagues on Capitol Hill. Almost 3 years later, that's a good point to bring up, right? She was stripped of committee assignments. Now she might chair one. Almost 3 years later, Ms. Greene, it's the New York Times, is poised to hold a gavel for the first time, a sign of the ascendancy of the MAGA wing of the GOP in Congress, where President-elect Donald Trump's most loyal allies will occupy prominent posts next year. Representative James Comer of Kentucky, chairman of the House Oversight Committee, is planning to create a new subcommittee to partner with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to eliminate government waste. The committee, which has yet to be created, will work with the new, supposedly department, but not a department, of government efficiency, known as DOGE, D-O-G-E, and leading Republicans have agreed to allow Ms. Greene to serve as its chairwoman. Now, I guess, okay, well, that helps clear things up a little bit. It's a subcommittee and not a committee. And so, let's see. I think, can you create new subcommittees I don't think it's entirely just based on committee rules. I think it probably has to get a House floor approval as well. But they'll certainly get it. But I was wondering why, as I was reading it, why is James Comer making an appearance in the story? Republicans said the committee would be charged with investigating waste and corruption within the federal government. Okay, sure. Even though she is not yet the chairwoman of a committee that does not yet exist, subcommittee really, Ms. Greene's new position appeared to be a done deal, with top Republicans confirming it would be hers to lead when the new Congress convenes in January. That is something that they can actually deliver. So I take it differently than I do with any news about this supposed Department of Government efficiency, which is not as easy to create. And although, they may actually get that department, given that they'll have Republican majorities in both houses, but it will take some time and take some logistical time to stand up and get working. But this is a great opportunity, really, for reminding reporters that there are great modifiers out there for almost everything that you deal with in the Trump world. Purported, purports to this, purports to that, or purportedly, did such a thing. It's lighter than allegedly, and but captures the truth of the matter. You never know. With the kind of communications that the Trump administrations use, you really just never know whether something has really happened or not, or whether it's happened properly. Anyway, she goes on to say, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm excited to chair this new subcommittee designed to work hand in hand with President Trump, Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, and the entire Doge team, which there isn't one. Ms. Greene said in a statement on Thursday, we will identify and investigate the waste, corruption, and absolutely useless parts of our federal government. Mr. Ramaswamy confirmed that the plans in a post on X, Mr. Musk's social media platform, writing that he was, quote, looking forward to working with Ms. Greene and Congress. Proper oversight of agencies and public transparency are critical. Thankfully, we won't have to deal with it. Leading a panel alongside a federal agency whose name invokes an internet meme. The original Doge was a Shiba Inu whose image spread widely and who's inspired a cryptocurrency that Mr. Musk endorsed, well, pumped and dumped, really, seemed to be a fitting job for Ms. Greene, a native on right-wing social media. Over the past year, Ms. Greene has distinguished herself as one of the showiest members on the House Oversight Committee, the main investigative organ of the House. Last year, during a hearing with whistleblowers from the Internal Revenue Service, she showed sexually explicit images of Hunter Biden, the president's son. Parental discretion advised, she said, before unveiling her poster boards and drawing immediate condemnation from Democrats for her stunt. In her statement on Thursday, she hinted the same no-holds-barred style would guide her work with the new subcommittee. No topic will be off the table, she said. Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland, the ranking Democrat on the Oversight Committee, mocked the creation of the panel. So now a noted student of American government, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, will chair a subcommittee to work with two unvetted billionaires who stand to receive billions more in government contracts and subsidies from the government under Trump, Mr. Raskin said. Echoing President-elect Donald J. Trump's signature use of caps lock, Ms. Greene added, our subcommittee's work will expose people who need to be fired. Wow, that was an intellectual tour de force. Not the article, but the quotes from, I guess, the person charged with overseeing the thing that doesn't exist, which will be chasing its tail looking for stuff to destroy. All right, just wanted to sort of note that for the record, that they've found a task to keep her busy with, and that's what it's going to be. All right, let's see. A couple other things to add here. So I've given everybody the reminder that, yeah, they could attempt to change the rules with or without, whether or not Matt Gaetz attempts to rejoin Congress. They could certainly try to change the rules to give themselves a new excuse not to release the report, but that will just, leave them open to more attacks and hopefully more attempts to use privileged questions and privileged motions to try to force more votes on the release of that report. All right, let's see. Got to scan around and see what else we have here. Oh, okay. Something else on Pam Bondi. Does this give us any more about this. Well, it's a little bit more. This is the detail from Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington crew and their complaint that they made about the illegal donation made to Pam Bondi's organization. So it's an interesting perspective. Maybe we can add that. You can read through the crew version of the story, beginning by saying that from February of 2008 through May of 2011, the Florida Attorney General's office received at least 22 complaints regarding Trump University, the Trump Institute, and related entities. But later on, after she had solicited and then accepted the bribe, said, "Oh, I didn't hear anything about it. I got this contribution before I ever had any complaints about Trump University." Apparently not true. So, jump ahead to 2013. They say the New York Attorney General filed a lawsuit against Trump University for engaging in persistent fraud, illegal and deceptive conduct. And then Florida Attorney General Bondi's office told multiple publications that they were reviewing the suit and considering joining. Then a couple of days later, the Donald J. Trump Foundation makes that $25,000 contribution to And Justice for All. The donation, illegal for a 501c3 private foundation to give, was personally solicited by Bondi from Trump, although she probably thought she was soliciting $25K from him personally because he was supposedly a billionaire. But once again, using, things other than his money, even if it isn't necessarily other people's money, to do it. But sometimes it was other people's money. I remember from our early coverage of Trump and the way he did work, he very frequently would leverage that money out of friends and business partners and put it into the foundation, saying he was going to be doing charitable work with it, and then just, using it to pay personal slush fund expenses. All right. Well, I don't think this is revelatory, but it's interesting detail that crew has to offer. But I think we got the picture on Bondi, and it does seem like there are a million other things that we really want to try to get to. Let's see. CNN had reported yesterday, I guess we'll make note of it one more time, but it was noted in one of the earlier pieces that I had put away here. CNN exclusive report. Ethics Committee told of second sexual encounter between Matt Gaetz and a 17-year-old at party, sources say, which is bad, and it should be on the record, and I'll share it with you in the roundup so that you can take a look and be up to speed on it. But I guess now that he's withdrawn, it's with somewhat less urgency that we share the story. Here's a story, though, that we ought to be paying more attention to, and goes, I guess, hand in hand with the problem that Pam Bondi poses as being easily bribable to get her to shy away from pro-consumer work, consumer advocacy, and anti-fraud pursuits. Belying the whole, we'll take care of the forgotten man. All right. And this one, Greg Sargent on the beat here over at the New Republic. A Trump judge just nixed overtime pay for millions of workers. And the media yawned. Another problem. Again, Greg Sargent over at the New Republic. Remember the right-wing frenzy over Rich Men North of Richmond, the song? I sort of do. I do remember it. I don't remember the guy's name who did it, but we'll be reminded of it in a second. But it became something of a theme song for the Trump campaign. Like, yeah, we'll help you get back at all those rich guys that are exploiting you. Oh, boy. I mean, nothing could be dumber in voting for Trump. But, what can I tell you? Well, this ruling, still in the subheader here, this ruling exposes Trump MAGA hypocrisy on the working class and reveals a big media failure as well. You probably missed it, Greg starts this way, because it created barely a ripple in the media. But last Friday, a federal judge appointed by Donald Trump struck down one of President Biden's most pro-worker policies, his effort to ensure that far more Americans benefit from overtime pay. Oh, I thought we liked that stuff. No, of course not. Donald Trump is a corporate guy. He's used to paying people's pay, or having to pay people to do work. But, of course, he's also used to chiseling them every chance he gets. So, anyway, around 4 million salaried workers with lower incomes are the losers in this decision, yet it generated startlingly few news stories and no outraged missives from leading columnists. That seems weird. Biden, why didn't you do anything for the economy? Oh, you mean making it necessary to compensate people at higher rates for overtime pay to the tune of billions of dollars? Yeah, we did that. No sticker on that one, but Trump judge is now undoing it. Watching this all unfold brings to mind a now forgotten controversy. Remember when, here's the answer here, Oliver Anthony, a little-known folk singer, went viral in 2023 with his song lamenting the plight of working people imposed by the, quote, rich men north of Richmond? Donald Trump and Republicans claimed the bearded, red-haired Southerner as one of their own in a veritable bard of MAGA country who'd crafted the ultimate right-wing populist ballad of protest aimed directly at supercilious elites. This is the anthem of the forgotten Americans, gushed Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, who would have said it as the anthem of forgotten Americans. Media commentary endlessly analyzed the song as a cry of anguish straight from the blue-collar heartland, one that elite liberals should take to heart as a sign of how badly they'd failed regular Americans. Here's another forgotten detail about Anthony's song for you to contemplate. It was about overtime pay. I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay. You know, the way Greg says it, except without the beep. Yeah, I know. Well, that's the line. I'm just quoting it. And he laments that, quote, young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground, seemingly describing off-diagnosed social crises like self-medication, the spiritual alienation of modern work, and deaths of despair. All this was apparently a reference to Anthony's own stint in a North Carolina factory, and he blames it on the rich men north of Richmond, like Trump. Politicians and their corporate overlords rigging the system against people like him. This type of rigging is exactly what Biden's overtime policy would combat. His administrative rule proposed last year would raise the existing income threshold for many workers to qualify for extra pay for hours beyond the 40-hour week under the Fair Labor Standards Act. Right now, that threshold is only around $35,000 per year. The rule would raise it to around $58,000. Around 4 million additional people would qualify for overtime protections under this change. These are people who make more than $35,000 but less than $58,000 per year, but don't currently qualify for overtime. To oversimplify, bosses has reclassified many of these workers as managers, exempting them from federal overtime protections. The Biden rule would make them eligible. According to Labor Department spokesman Jesse Lauder, this group includes hundreds of thousands of people who do many types of manufacturing work, as well as those holding low to medium level positions in everything from retail and fast food franchises to construction. Many are overworked and underpaid due to the same elite rigging of our economy perpetrated by the supposed rich men north of Richmond. Guess who managed to block this rule that would have provided those people with relief? MAGA Republicans, allied with business interests. That's who. The lawsuit that succeeded combined 2 suits. One launched by, in case Pam Bondi has to withdraw at some point, you might want to know that one of them was launched by Trumpy Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. The other by a consortium of business groups. But they got together in this one. While the business coalition appears broad, it includes big players. We're talking about the National Federation of Independent Businesses, which gave over $500,000 to GOP candidates and a pittance to Democrats last cycle. The International Franchise Association, whose board includes executives from fast food behemoths like McDonald's, and the National Retail Federation, whose board boasts representatives from giants like Walmart and Target. Like the rich men north of Richmond, these are all well-heeled special interests who employ high-priced lawyers and lobbyists to influence politicians in D.C. The big question now looms, will the Trump administration fight to make this Biden rule a reality? Of course not. Some critics insist that the judge, Sean Jordan, was right to strike down the rule as unlawful. But as the Biden administration argues, its means of raising the overtime threshold is in keeping with authority granted by Congress and decades of precedent, and arguments to the contrary rely on misguided readings of the legal and practical realities at play here. Regardless, the Justice Department can now appeal the decision. It should, to compel Trump to either keep defending it or actively let it die. There's a little asterisk here noting that there's some kind of footnote here. The part about relying on misguided readings of the legal and practical realities at play here. Let's see if I can. I'd like to read those footnotes right in time. Oh, it says here just that the piece has been updated to reflect criticisms of the administration's overtime rule. I see. Okay. So it's unlikely, though, that Trump will continue that fight to save this rule. To be fair, Trump's record on this is mixed. In 2016, when the eligibility threshold was around $23,000, President Barack Obama tried to raise it to around $47,000, but a court struck that down. As president, Trump did raise the threshold via a similar rule. Yes, presidents do have this authority, but only to a meager $35,000, the current level, which happened to be a level that businesses and business groups could accept. Biden expanded or would expand this to millions more workers, which is why business interests tried to thwart it, apparently succeeding. During the rich men north of Richmond controversy, certain columnists pointed a finger at liberal elites, urging deep introspection about why they have lost touch with the anxieties of people like Oliver Anthony. Now that Trump has been reelected while winning more working-class voters, including Latinos, we're mired in another such debate. No one should deny the need for such introspection. It's obviously not enough for Democrats and liberals to say our policies are better for people like Oliver Anthony. A reformed approach should include an agenda that's substantially more economically populist, a clear-eyed look at why certain liberal policies alienate working-class voters, and a deep dive into why working people are skeptical that Democrats fight for their material interests these days. But surely it's a sign of another profound problem, one that deeply afflicts our discourse, that a genuine effort by Democrats to lift the fortunes of millions of people struggling with low overtime pay, one blocked by a Trump judge and business elites, garnered almost zero media attention. This, even as a working-class anthem partly about that very same problem, captivated the media for weeks. That disconnect captures one of the cardinal facts about our times. While Trump has broken with pro-big business orthodoxy to some degree, on tariffs and trade, for example, broadly speaking, he will outsource much of his agenda to the GOP's plutocratic wing. He is expected to deeply slash the safety net, to pay for more tax cuts for the rich, and to roll back many Biden labor policies, one that arguably constitute the most pro-worker agenda in decades, perhaps doing nothing on overtime as well. The media obsesses over Oliver Anthony and treats MAGA fetishization of him as sincere, but for all its dutiful coverage of our policy disputes, it can't seem to convey the larger truth about which party's policies are actually pro-worker and which are not. This deception runs deep in right-wing media, too. Media Matters found that Fox News devoted hours of programming to hyping rich men north of Richmond. And the network also made it the topic of its first GOP presidential debate. At my request, Media Matters searched transcripts in the Snapstream video database for Fox coverage of the ruling striking down the overtime rule and found zero such coverage. Yes, Anthony's song was about more than just overtime pay. It was about a broader set of social afflictions. That helps explain all the press attention to it. But after this extended media fixation, Trump and fellow populist J.D. Vance faced no media pressure at all during the campaign to say where they stood on Biden's effort to expand overtime pay to millions or whether they'll continue it. That is absurd. It reflects its own form of elite dereliction, one that leaves people less informed about the larger forces shaping their lives, the very thing, we're told, that makes so many people like Oliver Anthony feel powerless and adrift. This elite failure, too, deserves some serious introspection. Perhaps someone should write a song about it. Maybe that's the only way you can get that kind of attention. I thought that was interesting. Well worth the time for pre-weekend discussion. And now I want to scroll through and see if I can't find a few more things that we'd like to catch up on. And there's a lot. Let me try and sneak this one in just because I've had my questions about. I've seen this raised a number of times, and I don't think we've read anything about it on the air. This is from Mother Jones, David Korn, writing about RFK Jr. and the measles outbreak in Samoa, which I just keep hearing about but was looking for a sort of a comprehensive retelling of, and I hope this will do it. How RFK Jr. falsely denied his connection to a deadly measles outbreak in Samoa. He also championed a Samoan anti-vaxxer tied to the 2019 lethal eruption that killed scores of children. Wow. Appearing in Shot in the Arm, a 2023 documentary about vaccine opposition, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was asked about the deadly measles outbreak that occurred in Samoa in 2019 and claimed the lives of 83 people, mostly children. Kennedy, a leading anti-vaxxer who had visited the Pacific Island nation a few months before the outbreak, replied, "I'm aware there was a measles outbreak. I had nothing to do with people not vaccinating in Samoa. I never told anybody not to vaccinate. I didn't go there with any reason to do with that." He was just, hanging out in Samoa for no reason. Kennedy was being disingenuous, sidestepping his connection to that tragedy. Children's Health Defense, the nonprofit anti-vax outfit that he led until becoming a presidential candidate, had helped spread misinformation that contributed to the decline in measles vaccination that preceded the lethal eruption. And during his trip to Samoa, Kennedy had publicly supported leading vaccination opponents there, lending credibility to anti-vaxxers who were succeeding in increasing vaccine hesitation among Samoans. Moreover, in early 2021, Kennedy, in a little-noticed blog post, hailed one of those vaccination foes as a, quote, hero. In the interview for this film, Kennedy, as he frequently has done, was downplaying his actions as one of the most prominent anti-vax conspiracy theorists in the world, who has worked with and bolstered anti-vaxxers around the globe. In the years prior to 2019, measles had not been a problem in Samoa, but in 2018, 2 infants died after receiving the measles vaccine. So you can see something's happening here. What will they do with it? And what will anti-vaxxers do with it? And why did it happen? Well, the country quickly placed its vaccine program on hold as vaccine opponents, including Children's Health Defense, exploited these deaths to raise questions about the safety of vaccines. The vaccination rate plummeted from in the 60 to 70% range down to 31%. But the problem, it turned out, was not with the vaccine. 2 nurses had mistakenly, somehow, mixed the vaccine with a muscle relaxant. Once this was revealed, CHD, Kennedy's group, did not update social media posts suggesting the vaccine was the culprit. But guess what? They've updated them now. Those posts are no longer available. They deleted them. So these nurses admitted to making this mistake. It was terrible. They were punished for it, but they were supposed to be mixing the vaccine with saline solution, but they accidentally chose muscle relaxant and overdosed these 2 kids, these 2 infants, with muscle relaxants and killed them. And everybody said, oh no, the bad part of that shot was the measles vaccine. No. During the stretch in which the vaccination coverage was dropping in Samoa, Kennedy visited the nation in June of 2019. Why? And gave a boost to anti-vaxxers there who had used the death of these 2 infants to help cause this drop in vaccination rates. He had a meeting with Taylor Winterstein, a prominent Samoan-Australian vaccination foe. In an Instagram post featuring a photo of her with Kennedy, Winterstein wrote, "I am deeply honored to have been in the presence of a man I believe is, can, and will change the course of history." Well, by killing lots of children, yes. "This was a divinely timed, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I will forever cherish the conversations and moments we shared together in Samoa." She added hashtags used by anti-vaxxers. Public health experts complained Kennedy's visit to Samoa helped amplify anti-vax voices. In fact, there's really no other reason in the world for him to have been there at all. But he says, no, some other reason. Just don't know what it is. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's read more from Mother Jones. David Korn here about just what the hell is this story that we hear about anti-vaxxer RFK Jr. and the measles outbreak in Samoa. So, okay, we got a little bit of the background here. Kennedy later claimed, by the way, his encounter with Winterstein in Samoa was a chance occurrence. I mean, I think it's really starting to look like he went there to do that, but no, just by chance. I traveled all the way to Samoa and bumped into the most prominent anti-vax voice in Samoa in the middle of a vaccination controversy. Okay, but he acknowledged that his trip to Samoa had been arranged by, well, sure, why not, coconut farmer Edwin Tamasese, another prominent Samoan anti-vaxxer, but also a coconut farmer, and was paid for by Children's Health Defense, of course. Naturally, or, wealthy guy using his charity to pay for jet setting, but that's what people do. The point of the trip, he insisted, was to discuss with government officials the introduction of a medical informatics system that would allow Samoa's health officials to assess in real time the efficacy and safety of every medical intervention or drug on overall health, not just vaccines. See, this would include questioning the value of vaccinations, of course, but, it wasn't just this. In a 2021 interview with the Samoa Observer, Kennedy said he and Samoan Prime Minister, oh my goodness, oh dear, Tualepa Sailele, maybe, oh goodness. Oh, there's more. More name on the next line. That would have been his middle name, I guess, Selele. But, Malielagoi, I hope. My goodness. I'm not great with Samoan, I guess. But the Samoan Prime Minister and Kennedy, the name I'm familiar with, Kennedy, had talked a limited amount about vaccines. Sounds like downplaying to me, but despite the impression Kennedy gave in Shot in the Arm, that documentary, his trip was at least partly related to, you'll never believe it, the use of vaccines in Samoa. After the measles outbreak struck in November of 2019, and the Samoan government implemented an emergency compulsory anti-measles vaccination program to contain the spread, Winterstein and Tamasese opposed the effort with misinformation and harsh rhetoric. Winterstein compared the operation to Nazi Germany. Tamasese called it a killing spree, even though it was the opposite. He declared the vaccination operation the greatest crime against our people and suggested the vaccine itself was the cause of the outbreak. Tamasese advocated against the use of conventional medicine and antibiotics and urged people to rely on papaya leaf extract and vitamins instead of the vaccines and antibiotics. Oh, I don't know about that. During this outbreak, Kennedy's group wrote to Prime Minister Tuilaepa. Oh, boy. Okay, that's my best guess on that one. Tuilaepa. Tuilaepa. And he encouraged Samoan officials to examine the measles vaccine to determine scientifically, quote, if the outbreak was caused by inadequate vaccine coverage or alternatively by a defective vaccine. Or, hey, maybe the weird, inexplicable presence of muscle relaxant in the vaccine. So, Kennedy, like Tamasese, was suggesting the vaccine itself might be responsible for the thousands of cases and scores of deaths. The Samoan government declared a state of emergency and ordered anti-vaccination advocates to stop discouraging people from vaccinating. For his loud public opposition to the government's initiative, Tamasese was arrested and charged with incitement against a government order. Samoa's communications minister, oh boy, now I got more names to deal with, Afamasago Rico Tupai, boy, I hope I'm somewhere in the neighborhood, told TVNZ, New Zealand, I guess, the anti-vaxxers, unfortunately, have been slowing us down. Days after his arrest, Tamasese was granted bail and banned from online activities. In December of 2020, a judge dismissed the charges against Tamasese, noting that he had been improperly charged and that his prosecution and police had done a sloppy job presenting the evidence against him. Well, that's no good. Soon after that, Kennedy wrote a blog post for the CHD site that called Tamasese a medical freedom hero. He referred to the 2019 blast of measles in Samoa as merely a mild measles outbreak. 83 dead, but whatever. And praised Tamasese for having, quote, infuriated the global medical cartel. He suggested that the vaccine, along with lousy hospital protocols, had caused the deaths. Well, that part was actually true, but that it wasn't the vaccine. A photo accompanying this post showed Kennedy posing with both Tamasese and Winterstein, and the post included Tamasese's self-serving account of his actions during the outbreak. A few months earlier, during a podcast with Winterstein, Kennedy lauded her as the, quote, leading voice of dissent in Australia. The Kennedy campaign did not respond to a query containing questions about his visits to Samoa, the measles outbreak there, his praise of Tamasese, and his comments to the filmmakers. Children's Health Defense also did not reply to a message-seeking comment. The Samoa episode fits Kennedy's M.O. As an anti-vax champion, he has decried vaccinations as unsafe and ineffective, repeating the debunked notion that vaccines cause autism, and that he has boosted attempts throughout the world to convince people to eschew vaccines. Yet, when he has been questioned critically about these efforts, he has issued false denials and contended that he's just raising questions and calling for more research. In July of 2023, now, of course, now here he is on the verge of being, he's nominated for heading HHS, and he's saying, we just, what happened to the story, but we just need more research into vaccines. How about none? How about I block all research into vaccines? We take a pause on researching infectious diseases for the foreseeable future. That's not much of a policy. But okay, in July of 2023, at the invitation of House Republicans, he appeared at a congressional hearing and declared, I have never been anti-vax. I have never told the public to avoid vaccination. Yet that same month, during a podcast interview, he asserted, quote, there's no vaccine of any kind, I guess, that is safe and effective. which sounds an awful lot like telling people not to get it. Kennedy, as he claimed in the interview for Shot in the Arm, may not have publicly urged Samoans to refuse the measles vaccine, but he encouraged those who did. And the group he led helped spread misinformation to discredit vaccinations there. After the tragedy was over, he dismissed the outbreak as not serious and extolled the anti-vaxxers who helped bring it about. The Samoa chapter provides a clear case study of how Kennedy threatens public health and slyly sidesteps responsibility for that. Okay, so a little bit of extra added clarity, I hope, for the background of that story. All right, I gotta jump back, if I can, back into Pocket and hope it'll let me. Yeah, okay, there we go. Come on, regenerate that page so I can find some other stories that have been waiting for you to hear for a few days, some a little while longer. Okay, let's see. This one sent to me not that long ago by Scott, who remember when we were talking about earlier in the week about Trump and his massive deportation plans and trying to decide how much of it was something he could actually accomplish, something he even wanted to try, and how much of it was scare tactics in the hopes that people would become so frightened that they would do the cheapest kind and easiest and simplest and most humane, I guess, kind of mass deportation, self-deportation. Just pick up and leave. Well, there's an example of that, not directly related to the threats about roundups and mass deportations, but due to another earlier terroristic campaign by the Trump gang in Springfield, Ohio. So guess who's at the center of that one? The Guardian reported this one back on November 17th, so just a couple of days ago. Haitian immigrants flee Springfield, Ohio in droves after Trump election win. The city was, of course, subjected to false rumors from Trump and now loses residents integral to the community over mass deportation fears. I'm reading you the clipped version of the subheader there. But here's the full text. Who's our reporter here? Stephen Starr is the name on the byline, from a tiny office behind a Haitian grocery store on Springfield's South Limestone Street. Marjorie Kovaleski has spent years helping local Haitians overcome bureaucratic red tape to make their lives in the Ohio city a little bit easier. Imagine that. People who are refugees from natural disaster, resettling with legal status in the United States, and an American from the heartland is helping them combat bureaucratic red tape, all the things that add up to Donald Trump and his gang of weirdos hating you and targeting you for expulsion. But Kovaleski, whose family is Haitian, has noted a major change lately. Haitians are now coming to her to figure out how to leave, which I'm sure brings up big cheers in MAGA land. Some folks don't have credit cards or access to the internet, and they want to buy a bus ticket or a plane ticket, so we help them book a flight. She told The Guardian recently, people are leaving. Kovaleski, leaders in Springfield's Haitian community and others have relayed reports of Haitians fleeing the city of 60,000 people in recent days for fear of being rounded up and deported after Donald Trump's victory in the November 5th presidential election. The owner of one store is wondering if he should move back to New York or to Chicago. He says his business is way down, Kovaleski remarked. Trump has repeatedly said that he would end immigrants' temporary protected status, or TPS, the provision through which many Haitians are legally allowed to live and work in the U.S., and deport Haitians from Springfield once in office. For many, the threats are real. A sheriff in Sydney, a town 40 miles northwest of Springfield that is home to several dozen Haitian immigrants, allegedly told local police in September to, quote, get a hold of these people and arrest them. Bring them. I'll figure out if they're legal, he said, referencing Haitian immigrants in the area. As Jacob Payan, Payen, a co-founder of the Haitian Community Alliance who runs a business that includes helping Haitians in Springfield to file tax returns. Oh no, they're paying their taxes. Said, people are fully aware of the election result, and that is why they are leaving. They are afraid of a mass deportation. Several of my customers have left. One guy with his family went to New Jersey. Others have gone to Boston. I know 3 families that have gone to Canada. Some are thought to have moved to nearby cities, such as Dayton, where they believe they would be less visible to law enforcement. Others who had temporary asylum in Brazil are pondering going back to the South American country, community leaders say. Springfield's Haitian community has been in the spotlight since Trump falsely accused immigrants here of eating pets during a presidential debate in September. Since then, the city has seen false bomb threats and marches by some neo-Nazi groups after having experienced a revival in recent years, in large part because of Haitians who took jobs in local produce packaging and machining factories that previously there found many previously there found undesirable, filling the jobs no one else would take, I guess. Unofficial results of the presidential election found that Trump beat Harris by fewer than 150 votes in Springfield, despite his making false claims about immigrants in the Ohio City, a cornerstone of his anti-immigration election campaign. That, too, is interesting to me as a Loudoun County resident, watching all of the charges being leveled against Loudoun County public schools and it being used as a rallying cry for Republicans elsewhere, but still not working to help Republicans win in this area. They're still very, very, very far from it and have remained so in all of that time since, both through the Youngkin campaign and now all the way through the Trump campaign. A policy that's been around since 1990, the TPS program currently sees more than 800,000 immigrants who have fled conflict or humanitarian emergencies in 16 countries to live and work legally in the U.S. for a limited time. Live and work and pay taxes legally for a limited time. What's the problem? About 300,000 Haitians fleeing widespread violence in the Caribbean country have been authorized to remain in the U.S. through TPS until at least February 3rd, 2026. But while it once enjoyed support from both sides of the political aisle, Trump's first term saw a California court rule in 2020 that his administration could end TPS for citizens of Haiti and 3 other countries. TPS is granted and often renewed by the Secretary of Homeland Security. On Tuesday, reports emerged that Trump had chosen to give that post to the South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, who has deployed state National Guard troops to the U.S.-Mexico border several times in recent years. It's about as far away from South Dakota as you can get, but okay. Trump's deportation threats are happening at a time when Haiti is experiencing renewed violence from politically connected gangs. The country's main airport in Port-au-Prince has been closed periodically and was shuttered again on Tuesday after gunfire hit a commercial passenger airplane flying in from the U.S. That was the second time since October that gunfire had hit aircraft over Haiti. Though Trump may ultimately succeed in ending TPS for some immigrants, some legal experts believe that it's unlikely to happen during the early days of his administration after his second presidency begins on January 20th. There's a fear among Haitian communities that TPS is going to end on January 20th, and I don't think it's very likely for a number of reasons, said Katie Kirsch, a senior attorney at the nonprofit law firm Advocates for Basic Legal Equality. The strain any deportation effort would place on an already stretched immigration court system would be significant, if they bother going through courts, of course. Even if the program was ended, Kirsch said, current law allows for a court hearing that could take months or years to take place. Similarly, immigrants who have asylum applications filed also have an opportunity to have that application heard. By ending TPS, Trump could in fact make the issue of undocumented immigration even worse. TPS provides employment authorization and a right to reside in the U.S. So when a TPS grant ends, the people who have it immediately lose employment authorization unless another status which provides it is available to them. Says, Elon oh boy, this is a long one, Arulanatham. I'll try again, Ahilan Arulanatham of UCLA's law school. I apologize to you there. Who was among several lawyers to successfully challenge an earlier attempt by Trump to end TPS for Haitians as well as others in 2018. That effect occurs regardless of whether they face deportation. For companies in Springfield and nearby communities that depend on Haitian labor, Trump's comments could prove damaging. Oh no. The Haitians who filled thousands of jobs at area packaging and auto plants have helped rejuvenate once blighted neighborhoods and contributed to the local economy in myriad ways. While many food products lining the shelves of Springfield's Caribbean stores are imported, many items, bread from Florida and pinto beans from Nebraska, are American. Chicken, beef, and eggs served in Haitian restaurants are regularly sourced from local farms. Recently, a Haitian community organization bought a former fire station in the hopes of turning it into a facility for English language classes. You know, precisely the thing that everybody demands. Driver's education, and a meeting spot. I pay thousands of dollars in income and property taxes every year, said Payan, and because I work with Haitians to file their taxes, I see their W-2s and so on. If these people leave, that money is gone from the city and the local economy. Curiously, some Haitians who do not have a right to vote unless they are citizens have blamed prominent Democrats such as Bill and Hillary Clinton for destroying their country after a devastating 2010 earthquake killed about 250,000 people and displaced in excess of 1 million more. Their Clinton Foundation, which ran dozens of projects in the country, had helped raise billions of dollars to assist with reconstruction efforts, but many Haitians believe the funds were siphoned off, which the Clintons deny. Huge numbers of U.S. guns have been trafficked to Haiti in recent years, a fact that is not lost on some in the Springfield community, according to Kovaleski. They don't have any faith in the Democratic Party, she said. Some believe that if Donald Trump says, leave Haiti alone, he's going to leave us alone. Well, I don't know whether he's going to say that anytime soon, but an interesting angle on the story nonetheless. Well worth remembering. There's just a lot of propaganda out there that is aimed at undermining trust. Rightly or wrongly, it's all aimed at undermining trust, and that appears to be taking with people. All right, let's see. Other things that we might be able to sneak in before we end things here. I think we've made it clear what's been happening in the courts up in New York, but just in case you need it official update here. I have something from The Hill. Zach Schoenfeld and Ella Lee wrote up just the other day. Trump calls for hush money case dismissal, bids to run out clock on case. Probably not a surprise to anyone, but here's what's going on. President-elect Trump's attorneys signaled an effort to try to run out the clock on his New York hush money case, asking Judge Juan Merchan for a month to mount a formal effort to dismiss his criminal conviction in the wake of his election day win. So they're going to be, depending on the immunity doctrine, etc., and the rules against prosecuting a sitting president, etc., to just say, well, you're just going to have to freeze this case at best. Or really, at worst, I guess, freeze the case. Or really, we say it should be dismissed outright. That's opposed by the prosecutors. They say, well, we'll just sentence him after he leaves office, if he leaves office. But, of course, they're going to shoot the moon and ask for an outright dismissal. President-elect Trump's attorneys signaled this effort. Attorneys Todd Blanche and Emil Bove, whom Trump has named, by the way, to the number 2 and number 3 spots, respectively, in his Justice Department, requested permission to wait until December 20th to file their motion, which would come just a month before Trump's inauguration. Their letter was made public on Wednesday. I mean, if it wouldn't delay things further, which it would, I guess you could be saying, well, I make a motion that these two nuts can't represent Trump anymore. He's already rewarded them with top jobs in the Justice Department. He needs new attorneys. That would, of course, do the same and run out the clock, but I don't know. They shouldn't be involved in this case any longer, obviously, but prosecutors want a much faster timeline. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg said in a Tuesday letter that his office is open to freezing the proceedings during Trump's presidency, but urged the judge to set a speedier schedule to resolve the matter, proposing that Trump file his brief promptly and that prosecutors respond by December 9th. The maneuverings suggest the Trump team's intention is to delay the proceedings to make it as unlikely as possible that Merchan would sentence Trump before his inauguration. Once Trump is in office, the case is almost certain to be frozen or tossed out, and there'd be no chance of such a sentencing. Prosecutors oppose fully dismissing the case. Trump's lawyers said the president-elect's victory delivered a mandate that supersedes the political motivations of New York prosecutors. Bragg argued that the judge must weigh the constitutional weight of the office of the president against that of the jury, which convicted Trump on 34 counts of falsifying business records in connection with a hush money payment made to a porn actor ahead of the 2016 presidential election and was responsible for making him president in the first place. Trump's sentencing is currently scheduled for Tuesday, but is widely expected to be delayed as the judge sorts out the impact of the election. Both sides have indicated they are okay with a pause. Merchan must now decide whether to adjourn it and how fast he will rule on Trump's new dismissal argument. The judge also has yet to decide on whether to toss out the conviction entirely following the Supreme Court's presidential immunity decision, which gave the former president broad protections. Trump's attorneys have said that issue should take a back seat until their new post-election motion is resolved, including any appeals. Trump's other criminal cases have already reached dead ends in the wake of his re-election. A federal judge suspended all deadlines in Trump's federal election subversion case at special counsel Jack Smith's request. And another court agreed to pause Smith's appeal, seeking to revive his classified documents prosecution in Florida. Smith is due to provide an update on suggested next steps by December 2nd, and Trump's attorney said the request to wait to file their hush money motion until later in the month would enable them to first review Smith's suggestion. In Georgia, where Trump is accused of attempting to subvert the state's election results, the December 5th oral arguments in Trump's appeal to disqualify Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis were canceled without explanation. It remains unclear if the cancellation was the result of the election. I don't have to tell you either. So I just wanted you to know what the status was on those things. All right, let's see. Anything else that we could possibly sneak in? All right, how about a less than political piece that might fit and might at least encourage you to read on your own during the weekend from 404media.co. Source we've gone to before on tech stuff. Pokemon Go. Remember that? Pokemon Go players have unwittingly trained AI to navigate the world. Womp womp. Didn't you have some inkling that there had to be something behind this? They're making thousands and thousands of people walk all over the place with their cameras on at the street level. What are they doing here? Was it really just for the game? Emmanuel Myberg, M-A-I-B-E-R-G, reporting here that Niantic, which I guess is the company involved here, says it's using the data generated by Pokemon Go players to create a, quote, large geospatial model, unquote, that can navigate the real world and power robots that will probably come and arrest or kill you later on, I guess. Niantic. Niantic, the company behind the extremely popular augmented reality mobile games Pokemon Go and Ingress, that one I don't know, announced that it is using data collected by its millions of players to create an AI model that can navigate the physical world. Hooray, Terminators. In a blog post published last week, first spotted by Garbage Day, okay, I like the name, Niantic says it's building a large geospatial model. This name, the company explains, is a direct reference to the large language models, or LLMs, like OpenAI's GPT, which are trained on vast quantities of text scraped from the internet in order to process and produce natural language. Niantic explains that a large geospatial model, or LGM, aims to do the same for the physical world. A technology, it says, will enable computers not only to perceive and understand physical spaces, but also to interact with them in new ways, forming a critical component of AR glasses and fields beyond, including robotics, content creation, and autonomous systems. As we move from phones to wearable technology linked to the real world, spatial intelligence will become the world's future operating system. And at this point, I guess we slam into a paywall for this piece just as well, though, because it's kind of time to go. But we can read a little bit more as we exit, if we go back to Pocket. By training an AI model on millions of geolocated images from around the world, the model will be able to predict its immediate environment in the same way that an LLM is able to produce coherent and convincing sentences by statistically determining what word is likely to follow another. Okay. Large geospatial models will help computers perceive, comprehend, and navigate the physical world in a way that will seem equally advanced, Niantic said. I found the following explanation of Niantic's blog of how the LGM would work to be the clearest. Let's see how much I can get through. Imagine yourself standing behind a church. Let us assume the closest local model has seen only the front entrance of that church, and thus it will not be able to tell you where you are. The model has never seen the back of that building, but on a global scale, we have seen a lot of churches, thousands of them, all captured by their respective local models at other places worldwide. No church is the same, but many share common characteristics. An LGM is a way to access that distributed knowledge. Well, that didn't help me any. Maybe it helped you. Niantic's LGM builds upon its Lightship Visual Positioning System, VPS, which allows players to pin virtual items to physical locations in the world with centimeter-level accuracy. For example, Niantic recently introduced an experimental feature in Pokemon Go called Pokemon Playgrounds, where the user can place Pokemon at a specific location that will remain there for others to see and interact with. This feature, Niantic explains, is powered by massive amounts of data and is unique because it is taken from a pedestrian perspective from locations inaccessible to cars. So a little bit like Google's automated cars that map every street at the street level, but instead heading off into the sidewalks and alleys and sideways and byways. Oh dear.
I've been listening to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
Well, that's just another thing we have to worry about. But, well, there's still more, I'm sure, and you'll hear about it from Justice Putnam in the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next right here on Netroots Radio, for instance. Durbin and Schumer caving to MAGA. President Biden also continues to quietly lay roadblocks to protect America from Trump. Let's hear about them both. We'll see you next week.